Losing weight and cardio pretty much go together hand in hand. I mean, pretty much wherever you look, whether it's movies, magazines, or even anime, cardio is pretty much always going to be involved. Now sure, you could just simplify things by sucking it up, strapping your running shoes on, and just get them legs moving, boy. But I never really liked running anyways. Do you even need cardio? Will going on a run make you lose all your gains? What exactly is the best cardio for losing fat? In this video, I'm going to break down what I think the best way to utilize cardio for fat loss is. So technically, because of how fat loss works, cardio actually isn't necessary at all. You lose fat by being in a calorie deficit, and you can get yourself into a calorie deficit with diet alone and without doing cardio at all. However, I'd argue that it's actually far better to get yourself into a deficit with cardio than it is with diet alone. First of all, you're able to eat a lot more if you're active and you do a lot of cardio. People are always like, oh, it's so easy to out-eat the cardio you do. But it's like, bro, 5 miles of steps plus a 30-minute cardio session where you're burning 100 calories every 10 minutes. That's 800 extra calories you get for the day. That's ridiculous. I think if you have the time for it, and let's be real, the majority of you guys do have the time for it. I just replaced time I used to spend sitting on the couch or just playing video games with going outside and walking and watching videos on my phone instead, or getting a session in on the incline treadmill. Incorporating cardio into your daily routine is a no-brainer. There's two main categories of cardio, each with their own benefits and drawbacks. There's high-intensity interval training and low-intensity steady-state cardio. High-intensity interval training is going to be the kind of cardio that you do where the intensity is pretty much so high you can only sustain it for a short time. Low-intensity steady-state cardio, on the other hand, is, as the name suggests, low intensity. So generally, you can do it for a much longer period of time. High-intensity interval training really shines if you're into some kind of competitive sport. I think its greatest use case is really trying to improve your explosiveness. If you're trying to reach a certain level of conditioning for some kind of specific reason, high-intensity interval training a lot of the time is going to be the only way to get there. High-intensity interval training is going to include things like hitting the heavy bag, sprinting, going all out on an exercise bike. And just to simplify things a little bit, in this category, I'm going to include pretty much all highly intense cardio. Now, when it comes specifically to burning fat, high-intensity interval training, of course, is higher intensity, so you're going to end up burning more calories. However, even though you can burn a lot of calories really quickly, there's a ton of drawbacks. Because you're pushing yourself so hard, oftentimes it's pretty easy to go overboard and fatigue your muscles from it. On top of that, it's not just your muscles that are going to take a beating, your joints are included too. And especially in the context of losing fat, where you're typically going to be in a deficit, so recovery is going to be a little bit tougher for your body. This unnecessary fatigue will oftentimes result in interference with your resistance training, which, in a fat loss context, is extremely important to preserve your muscle. In other words, if you go overboard on doing high-intensity cardio, it might result in you losing some muscle mass, not only from the raw performance decrease you could potentially see in your resistance training, you may need extra rest days, which is going to decrease your total volume, and then the wear and tear on your joints may lead to you either needing a little bit of a deload a lot sooner than you'd like, or just taking unnecessary extra time off from the gym. On top of that, in a fat loss context, high-intensity interval training usually leads to a fairly high spike in hunger. Now, this is something that's very dependent on the individual, but for me, I find that doing high-intensity interval training usually does make me a lot hungrier, and as a consequence, my calories for the day usually end up a little higher than I would otherwise like them to be. I personally love my heavy bag sessions, but in a fat loss context, I'm not going to be relying on it. Now, on the other hand, you have low-intensity steady-state cardio. Slower paced, more endurance types of cardio. Now, because the intensity is obviously lower than high-intensity cardio, generally, you're going to be able to do it for a lot longer. So I think especially if you have a lot of time on your hands, since you can just get so much more raw time in on this kind of cardio, you can actually end up burning a lot more calories than you would have if you went for high-intensity interval training, or just high-intensity cardio in general. An extreme example, but 10 minutes going all out on an exercise bike has me ready for a nap, but I can walk for 4 hours straight, no problem. On top of that, since the intensity is low, you're not going to have the same amount of joint and muscle fatigue. So as long as you're not doing something ridiculous like 5 hours of low-intensity steady-state cardio, it's safe to say that as long as you don't overdo it for your level of conditioning, you're probably not going to see much interference with your resistance training. Now, with the idea of your specific level of conditioning in mind, you want to find the right balance of intensity and overall time performed, and then combine it with personal preference to decide what the best form of cardio is for you, as the specific type of cardio, so running versus biking, doesn't really matter that much from a fat burning perspective. If you think of yourself from a more physics and thermodynamics perspective, you can kind of break it down like this. Objects require energy to go through motion. In this case, this, the energy that's being used is going to be calories burned. So me just doing this right here, I'm putting my arm into motion and burning calories. The point I'm making here is it doesn't really matter what kind of motion or cardio you choose to do. I'd say that it's pretty important to experiment and find out what cardio forms you actually enjoy and which ones you can't stand. For me, I fucking hate running. Now this doesn't mean that I never ever run, but when it comes to cardio that I do consistently for the means of increasing my energy expenditure or just burning calories, my absolute favorite form of cardio is incline walking on the treadmill. This is because it has all of the great perks of low intensity steady state cardio. Doesn't interfere with my training. I can do it for a long ass time, which means I can burn a ton of calories with it. And because it doesn't really interfere with my recovery, I can do it pretty much every day. And then because I can sit on my phone the entire time, I like it just enough to be able to do it consistently. Now, post cardio hunger response really I think comes down to the individual. For me, I find that the form of cardio I'm doing and the different levels of intensity I'm doing have a great impact on how hungry that cardio makes me. So on the lowest end of the spectrum where I don't get hungry at all, there's walking. And then on the opposite end, for some reason, sprinting just makes me absolutely ravenously hungry. Now, I have friends who I know love sprinting and they sprint every day, and for some reason they have absolutely no appetite. But generally, the higher the intensity is, the hungrier you'll be. I also just want to reiterate real quick the importance of actually being able to do your cardio consistently. I mean, if you don't go in there and do it at all, it doesn't matter how optimal that form of cardio is. A suboptimal form of cardio that you can actually do consistently is going to be way better than the most amazing, optimal, low impact cardio in the world, which you can't stand, so you never do. So when it comes to the best cardio for burning fat, you want to consider the actual joint and muscle fatigue you get from the cardio itself, the level of hunger that results from that cardio for you specifically, how much you actually enjoy that cardio, and kind of tying back into the first point, the recoverability of that cardio. Again, you really want something you could do every single day. Now, I would like to mention, for those that are fairly unconditioned, a lot of cardio is going to leave you feeling very sore. So even just going at a moderate incline on the treadmill may lead to you being bedridden for a few days. So it's really important to take it slow and work your way up to the higher numbers. You're not going to start out just being able to effortlessly do 3-speed 15 incline on the treadmill for an hour. So being a little bit sore is alright, especially if you're a beginner. The most important point I want to hammer home is that when it comes to your body composition, you absolutely want to prioritize your weight or resistance training. Your cardio shouldn't interfere with it. Now, like I mentioned, if you're a beginner and you're just kind of getting into it, maybe you fucked up, you went a little too hard on your cardio, you're a lot sorer than you expected, that's a little different. If anything, for beginners, that's actually a good thing because you actually now know what intensity of cardio is too much for you, and you have that data to back off of that and work your way up to those higher levels later. If you think about it, it's actually pretty interesting how high intensity cardio at the start of your training can actually become low intensity cardio later. I mean, I have a feeling if I went back in time 3 years and I made myself back then do the cardio I'm doing now, 13 speed, 3 incline for 30 minutes to an hour, my Discord moderator ass would have been fucking dead. If you haven't already, check out my website. It's the first link in the description. I recently started doing one-on-one coaching where I'll work with you whether you're skinny fat, overweight, in decent shape and just looking to get more jacked, or you're just looking for in-depth and personalized fitness advice. Or alternatively, you can contact me on Instagram or via email and the contact me page on my website. And I know it's kind of like blah blah blah, shut up, stop plugging your coaching, but after the transformation I made and being in that terrible spot, I genuinely just want to help as many of you as possible. So as I keep growing my channel, I'm going to keep coming up with products and services like this that I actually believe in and get behind, not just some bullshit cash grab $10 Indian pre-workout. I'm going to keep finding ways that I can help people get jacked as fuck. And then of course, kind of the elephant in the room, I need money to live and continue to do this. And then most exciting to me, reinvest into this, keep growing, and make cooler and cooler shit. So really, thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of those of you who are supporting me right now, my current clients, and just those of you who are watching this video right now, even without realizing it, are actually funding my long and crazy career I have ahead of me. So again, thank you. See you in the next video.